What happens if Willow joined the SGC? This is Willow versus the Scoobies. The Scooby Gang has gone too far. Today, Willow must choose between her past friends and her oath to the Air Force, leading to a sacrifice so brutal it leaves SG-1 in shock. Let's dive into episode 29 of An Extraordinary Journey. Sunnydale Army Base, earlier the same day, 1900 hours. Once the Homeworld security jet landed at Sunnydale Army Base, it taxied toward a hangar at the far end of the runway. Numerous SUVs and Humvees were already staged there, alongside Army and NID rapid response personnel. O'Neill and the remaining members of SG-1 watched through the aircraft windows as the teams, all wearing black tactical gear, milled around metallic weapons cases, checking and distributing gear. When the jet came to a stop, the door opened and O'Neill led SG-1 down the stairs. They were met by Major Paul Davis, dressed in his formal uniform, and Agent Barrett of the NID, who wore a dark charcoal suit. Davis and Barrett guided them to a nearby table covered in marked-up maps of Sunnydale. The maps indicated the location of the hack, the army base, Willow's home, the Bronze, and the UC Sunnydale campus. The campus was further annotated with a note identifying the Underground Initiative base. All of these locations would need to be checked if Willow's home and the nearby warehouse district yielded nothing. Davis, have those holes in security been sealed? O'Neill demanded, referring to the vulnerabilities the hackers had exploited to access Willow's files. Davis pressed his lips together before exchanging a glance with Barrett. O'Neill noticed the look immediately, and he didn't like it. His gut twisted, warning him that bad news was coming. Barrett straightened. "General," he acknowledged, briefly glancing at Carter before looking back at O'Neill. "Someone hacked into Lieutenant Colonel Carter's file as well." The revelation stunned O'Neill, Carter, Daniel, and Teal'c. Davis quickly added that whoever accessed Carter's file had managed to retrieve the fully redacted version. Carter shook her head, confusion clear on her face. "Why would anyone even think to hack into my file?" she questioned. "How would they even know to access it?" Silence followed. Davis, Barrett, O'Neill, and the rest of SG-1 stood frozen. The only sounds came from nearby Army personnel and NID rapid response teams quietly checking weapons and murmuring among themselves. After several seconds, Daniel covered his mouth and dragged his hand through his hair. He pressed his lips together before speaking. "Only Sam's file?" he asked carefully. "Someone hacked only into Sam's file." Barrett nodded once. "What are you thinking, Daniel?" O'Neill pressed. Daniel shook his head slightly before reminding them. "Someone hacked into Willow's file." Everyone stared at him as if he had stated the most obvious truth imaginable. Slowly, understanding dawned. Teal'c inclined his head in agreement, followed by the others. Daniel continued, "Why didn't they hack into Sam's file back then? Or mine? Or Jack's? Or Teal'c's?" He paused, letting the question settle before turning to Carter. "Sam, when did you call Willow's friend? What was his name?" "Xander?" Carter replied, uncertain where Daniel was heading. "Around what time did you call him?" Daniel asked. Carter answered, and Daniel immediately turned to Barrett. "When was the hack into Sam's file detected?" Barrett gave the time. As soon as he finished, realization hit the group simultaneously, especially when they noted the breach had been detected only minutes after the call. Teal'c stiffened. Davis and Barrett stared at each other in disbelief. Daniel pressed his lips together, looking from Carter to O'Neill. "You think their phone lines were tapped?" O'Neill concluded. Daniel nodded. "Why else hack into Sam's file now when they didn't earlier?" Carter folded her arms tightly across her chest, her voice dropping. "They overheard my name," she murmured, "and then hacked into my file." Daniel nodded again. The tension in the air sharpened instantly. O'Neill flared his nostrils before snapping into command mode. "All right, let's move out. Daniel, you and Teal'c stick to the plan we discussed on the plane. Take a team to Red's home." Daniel and Teal'c acknowledged the order. They armed themselves, and 20 minutes later, the operation was underway. A convoy of 4 SUVs and 4 Humvees rolled out of Sunnydale Army Base for a 20-minute drive into the city. Once they reached the city limits, the convoy split. 3 SUVs and 3 Humvees headed toward the industrial area, the warehouse district, while the other 2 turned in the direction of Willow's home. Prometheus, orbit over Earth, 2010 hours. The Earth ship Prometheus hung in space halfway between the planet below and the moon. Its systems actively scanned the surrounding area for any cloaked ships or larger remnants of debris from Anubis's destroyed fleet. Any sizable fragments had already been eliminated to ensure satellites and the ISS remained safe. Colonel Pendergast and his crew were scheduled to leave orbit within the next hour once supplies had been fully restocked. He had just finished signing off on a system log when a sharp beeping tone sounded from the tactical console to his left. "Womack," Pendergast called, leaning forward in his chair. "Did we detect something out there?" He rose and stepped behind the tactical officer. The display showed a blinking marker, not in space, but fixed on the surface of Earth. Womack glanced over her shoulder and shook her head. "No, sir," she paused briefly before continuing. "We're getting a ping from Captain Willow Rosenberg's subcutaneous transmitter." "Captain Rosenberg?" Pendergast repeated. Colonel Carter had asked him to keep watch for Willow's subcutaneous transmitter using the Prometheus's sensors. They had already scanned Sunnydale as requested, but had found nothing. At the time, it had been disturbing, though Carter had suggested Willow might be underground, an issue since the Prometheus's current sensor suite couldn't penetrate deeply beneath the surface. Now, suddenly, Willow's transmitter had appeared on the screen. "We've been scanning Sunnydale for the past few hours with no luck," Pendergast noted carefully. "And we're getting a signal now? Are you sure it's hers?" "Yes, sir," Womack confirmed without hesitation. Pendergast nodded. "Send Captain Rosenberg's location to the SGC. They'll relay it to SG-1 and General O'Neill." With a quick nod, Womack transmitted the coordinates. At the SGC, Walter, the on-duty technician, stared at the incoming data, his eyes widening as he read the message from the Prometheus. Leaning toward the others in the control room, he whispered that Willow's subcutaneous transmitter had just pinged somewhere in Sunnydale, a detail that would soon spread quickly through the SGC rumor mill. Walter double-checked the coordinates on his screen. Once Willow's location in Sunnydale was confirmed, he opened a secure channel and contacted O'Neill. Willow's signal blinked steadily on the monitor as Walter began to speak. Slayer Council, main office at that same time. Buffy and the others watched one screen among a bank of monitors as footage from the room where Willow had been held played back. The camera feed showed Willow slowly forcing herself to her feet, panting heavily after Josh suddenly collapsed. Moments later, Angel and Faith were violently hurled into the left and right walls of the room. Buffy and the others turned toward Tara just as she gasped sharply and sagged back onto the couch. Xander and Dawn rushed to her side. Tara rubbed her forehead, wincing as she explained that Willow had somehow pushed through and incapacitated the witches who had been channeling their abilities through Josh's psychic powers. "The nullifying spell is down now," Tara murmured to Buffy. She shook her head and rubbed her forehead again before continuing. "Willow took out enough witches that we can't keep the spell going." "Okay," Xander muttered as he moved toward the cluster of screens in the corner where the others were gathered. Over the audio feed, they heard Willow tell Buffy that they needed to talk about boundaries. Xander glanced at Buffy, then back at Dawn, who stared at both of them with open anger. Dawn spoke up. Willow was lying. Xander turned toward her. "About what?" "She lied about magic," Dawn continued, scoffing. "She said she doesn't use magic anymore, and she just used it." Tara shook her head before Giles could interject. "It wasn't magic," she explained quietly, leaning forward as Dawn sat beside her. "It wasn't magic she used to, well, give me this headache. It was something else." Buffy turned away from the screens. "I'm going to her. If she's using magic, then..." She stopped herself. Willow wouldn't use magic against her. Buffy could distract her, talk her down, Get close enough, and then put her in a hold and knock her unconscious. No, Tara whispered, asking Xander to help her stand. They all turned back to the screens where several potentials approached Willow, only to be flung aside without any visible movement from her hands. Willow continued down the halls, her eyes flickering briefly toward the cameras as she strode past. Tara explained that while the spell preventing Willow's phone from being tracked had been rendered ineffective, she had just magically contacted the other witches in the building to slow her down. Then she added that it would be better if she confronted Willow herself. She won't suspect me. Before Buffy could respond, Tara pressed on. Every witch is trying to stop her harmlessly. Once I'm close, I can use a stronger spell that will render her unconscious. Buffy's lips parted, but Tara continued. I won't hurt her, promise. I'll prepare a spell, Giles added, watching Tara closely. One that will compel her to tell us the truth. Once she's unconscious, Xander and I will bring her here. Tara nodded. Everyone then turned towards Buffy. Dawn added that it was a good idea. Buffy stared at the screens as Willow continued down the hallways, knocking out one potential after another who tried to stop her. Thoughts raced through Buffy's mind before settling into one grim realization. Willow had the power to help them in the Unmaker War. She is still powerful. With her on their side, so many potentials, witches, seers, and others could have been saved. But Willow had chosen to leave them, chosen to run from Sunnydale. Buffy turned back to the group, anger etched across her face. Bring her in. After Tara left the main office with Xander and Giles, Buffy faced Dawn. Pull all the potentials back into the dorms. Tell Spike and Andrew to make sure everything is locked down. Dawn nodded and immediately placed the call. Buffy returned her attention to the screens, watching Willow move through the corridors, occasionally rubbing at her forehead. As Tara, Giles, and Xander made their way toward her, Willow suddenly halted and pressed her fingers to her temple again. The mental pressure had returned, mental fingers pushing against her defenses. Her mental walls were reinforced now, but the strain intensified the closer she drew to the main office, where she knew Buffy and the others were waiting. She could still use her telekinesis and telepathy, but it felt like moving through thick, viscous liquid. Concentration slipped through her grasp. Voices brushed against her mind, distant and distorted, like sounds heard underwater. After several moments, Willow paused again and massaged her forehead. Then she sensed a familiar presence. Tara stepped around the corner into the hallway. She looked calm, arms resting at her sides, palms open in a clear display that she was unarmed. Tara, Willow breathed, shaking her head. Tara had been one of the witches powering the spell that kept her phone from being tracked. Willow, Tara pleaded softly, please, surrender. We just have some questions. Tara, Willow replied with a wary frown. Just turn around and leave. You don't have to be a part of this. I'm sorry, Willow. I can't, Tara admitted quietly. Just give Buffy what she wants to know. Then you can go. We won't stop you. I won't stop you. Tara, Willow answered, exhaustion seeping into her voice. I'm done explaining this. What Buffy wants to know is classified. I can't tell anyone what I do. Even my parents don't know. I'm asking you to leave, because once this is over, there will be hell to pay. You shouldn't be involved in this. I trust Buffy, Tara replied. We need to know why this is classified. You could be dangerous. We're friends, Willow urged gently. Please, don't do this. I can make you forget, Tara countered in a hush. Everything you tell us, you won't regret it. Willow stared at her in disbelief. How can you say that? That's almost exactly what Josh tried to do. If they go through with this, I'll be forced to reveal information that could compromise national security. Are you really okay with that? Please, Willow, Tara whispered. I promise we'll protect it. Maybe we can use the information better than the military. Tara, Willow pleaded, shaking her head. I'd rather die than tell you, Buffy, or anyone else. None of you have the right to know what I know. Suddenly, the hallway spun. Willow couldn't reach out telepathically or push Tara away. Her thoughts scattered, slipping out of focus. It felt worse than earlier. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor, rolling onto her side. "What did you do?" Willow whispered weakly. "An advanced confusion spell," Tara replied, her voice trembling. "It will make you fall asleep. Then we'll take you to the main office. Giles will perform the truth spell, and I'll make you forget this ever happened. We'll give you good memories instead. You'll never know. You won't even remember this conversation." "If you keep going," Willow murmured as her eyelids grew heavy, "I won't be able to protect you from what comes next. They won't escape this. They'll be hunted across the earth. Please, walk away." "Sleep, Willow," Tara murmured sadly as Willow lost consciousness. "Everything will be alright. You'll see." Once Willow was unconscious, Tara turned and called out to Giles and Xander. They hurried over. Xander crouched and gently lifted Willow into his arms. He stared down at her peaceful face and breathed. "This isn't how it was supposed to go." "This is for our safety," Giles reminded him quietly. "No more lies. Once she tells us what we need to know, Tara will erase her memories. She'll never remember any of this." "I know," Xander snapped, then immediately closed his eyes and drew in a steadying breath. "There just had to be a better way." "There would have been," Giles replied gently, "if she had told us what she did in the Air Force. The redactions, the lies, it's all suspicious." Xander looked down at Willow, lips pressed tightly together. He knew Giles was right. Buffy and Dawn were right. Willow had been hiding things. He understood military secrecy, but the Scoobies had been burned too many times. "Let's just get this over with," Xander muttered, carrying Willow past them and down the hall. Outside Willow's home, Daniel and his team had just arrived at Willow's home. The house was dark, with no lights on. At first glance, it looked as though she wasn't home. Still, it wouldn't hurt to knock. Daniel was about to open the SUV door when his cell phone began to ring. He pulled it from his pocket and glanced at the caller ID. It was O'Neill. "Jack?" Daniel greeted as he flipped the phone open. Teal'c looked on as Daniel's face paled. Daniel nodded once, slipped the phone away, and instructed the driver to head toward the industrial area where the others were waiting. He then turned to Teal'c. "Willow's transmitter just pinged. She's in the last location where the hack originated." As the SUV rumbled forward, Daniel added, "The industrial area, near where Jack and the others are using as a staging ground." Teal'c inclined his head in acknowledgement as Daniel repeated the destination to the driver. While Daniel and the others were en route, O'Neill stood near a fence bordering the industrial district, staring into the maze of warehouses beyond it. Humvees and SUVs were lined up behind him. The NID Rapid Response Unit and an army team were being briefed by Agent Barrett. Nearby, Carter was in conversation with Colonel Pendergast. Their exchange routed through the SGC up to the Prometheus and back again. After Willow's transmitter pinged, the Prometheus had begun scanning the building from which the signal originated. O'Neill turned and headed toward Carter just as she ended her call. She spread a map across the hood of the lead SUV and briefed him and Davis. "The complex consists of 3 connected buildings," Carter explained, indicating the circle structure. "Approximately 20 people are in the middle building. There are another 40 in the connected building on the left, and the one on the right appears to be empty." O'Neill nodded and dispatched several army soldiers to scout the 3 buildings. They needed eyes on the security situation around the perimeter. "And then, once Teal'c and Daniel arrive, we'll head in," O'Neill said. Several minutes later, the SUV carrying Teal'c and Daniel rolled in, accompanied by the Humvee. Not long after, O'Neill and the others received reports from the scouts, who had taken concealed positions near the Slayer Council buildings. There was no visible security presence. The plan was finalized within minutes, and O'Neill led SG-1 along with the Army and NID Rapid Response personnel toward the Slayer Council buildings. Slayer Council Main Office. At the sound of a beep, Xander looked away from the unconscious Willow lying on the couch. She had been there for several minutes and had just begun to stir, her hands and feet bound together by magic. He turned toward the bank of monitors and felt a chill crawl up his spine at the sight of several armed personnel entering the empty main lobby through the front door, which was shattered. Buffy? We have a problem." Xander muttered as he watched the teams fan out through the lobby and about to make their way through the building. "It's over, Buffy," Willow murmured groggily as she came to, her voice weak. "I'm begging you to stop this. Just surrender, please. The fact that so many people are here to get you back means the information you have is extremely important," Buffy replied, leaning closer to Willow. "And since you're being so stubborn about it, I'm starting to doubt your loyalty to me." "Buffy, what are you talking about? Are you even listening to yourself?" Willow asked, staring up at her in disbelief. "This has nothing to do with me being loyal to you, or you being loyal to me. You're not supposed to know what I do. No one is. It's classified for a reason." "Which means that it could pose a threat to us," Buffy countered. "Oh, for crying out loud," Willow exclaimed as she turned towards Xander. Her eyes landed on the bank of monitors behind him, each screen showing someone being zip-tied while armed personnel in black tactical gear moved through the corridors. She recognized Carter and Daniel and assumed the rest of SG-1 were present as well. She tried to reach out mentally, but it felt like shouting through static. Willow could still feel her thoughts scattered and unfocused, which meant Tara's spell was still active, while, at the same time, mental fingers tried pressing harder into her mind. Willow glanced at Tara, who was on the phone, issuing instructions about locking down the main building and evacuating through the alternate emergency exits and then moving down to the underground tunnels. "Tara," Buffy ordered, her gaze never leaving Willow, "call Spike 2, evacuate all the potentials from the dorms." She turned to the blonde witch. "Then take Dawn and get out through the northeast exit." "I'm not going anywhere," Dawn protested immediately. After Tara made the call, she looked back at Buffy and shook her head. "I'm not leaving either." Willow stared at them in disbelief, her eyes flicking between Tara, Buffy, and Dawn. She turned toward Giles, who was hurriedly reading through a page in a leather-bound book, then back to Buffy and Xander. "You guys need to surrender, now," Willow pleaded. "Please, don't let whatever this is go any further than it already has. I'll speak up on your behalf. Just stop all this madness." "Are you begging now, Willow?" Dawn challenged, stepping closer. "Buffy, stop this. Please," Willow implored, ignoring Dawn. "Buffy, we need to get out of here," Xander urged. Buffy ignored him. She faced Tara instead. "Cloak this room so no one can find us." Willow watched as Tara murmured a spell and traced sigils through the air. Moments later, she confirmed that the cloaking spell was active and that anyone searching for Willow would be unable to find the door to the main office. Buffy nodded. Then she turned to Xander, who was still waiting for an answer. "No, Xand. We leave after I get what's in Willow's head." Her eyes then locked onto Willow's. Buffy continued, "I needed to keep us safe." "Buffy," Willow said, leaning forward on the couch. "Please don't do this. I'll protect you. I'll try to make sure nothing happens to you or the others. Think about what you've already done. You illegally detained an Air Force officer, broke into federal databases to access my classified file, which is restricted by order of the President himself, and you tried to break into my mind. Do you have any idea what could happen to you?" Tears gathered in the corners of Willow's eyes as she imagined Buffy and the others being taken into custody. She had no idea what would happen next, but instinct told her it would be bad. "Don't do this," she begged. "Stop it right now. Just surrender." "Tara," Buffy said, her hands clenching into fists. "After Giles uses the truth spell and she tells us what we need to know, make her forget we were ever here." I can," Tara replied hesitantly, "but we agreed to give her a better memory about—" "We don't have time," Buffy snapped. "Right now, I don't want her to remember us being here, or why she was here." Willow pressed her lips together. "All right," Tara agreed softly, glancing at Willow, who was glaring at Buffy. Willow looked away. This was madness. What's happening now must be because of the Unmaker War, right? It must have made them so jaded, so paranoid. Willow turned toward Dawn. She was still a child. Whatever happened next, she did not want Dawn to face it. Willow knew the aftermath of this would be ugly, and she refused to let Dawn be dragged further into it. "Get out of here, Dawn. Take the exit Buffy mentioned," Willow urged. The redhead turned to Xander, who shook his head. "It's closed off. There are armed personnel nearby." Dawn rushed toward Willow until her face was only inches away. "Shut up!" she shouted. "Don't you dare tell me what to do." Willow did not flinch when Dawn yelled. She understood the younger girl's anger. Dawn felt abandoned. Willow knew that, and yet it still hurt to hear those words from someone she thought of as a sister. "Giles," Buffy called as Tara gently pulled Dawn away. The Slayer turned back to her watcher. "Are you ready with the spell?" Giles nodded. Buffy drew in a steadying breath, telling herself this was necessary. There could be no more secrets between her and Willow. "Use the truth spell," she ordered. "I want all her secrets." Willow shook her head at Giles, but he was already casting. The moment it settled over her, she felt the compulsion rise. A relentless pressure to speak the truth to any question, no matter the cost. Terror flooded her. The secrets of the Stargate, the SG-1, the Asgard, the Goa'uld, the Ancients. If she spoke, she had no idea what the aftermath would be. Forget classified information. Her entire career could be destroyed. Who would ever believe she had been forced to reveal state secrets by a magic spell? "I have a lot of questions, Will," Buffy said, crouching in front of her. "But the most pressing are these. Where do you really work? What do you really do?" Willow fought the spell with everything she had. It frightened her how impossible it was to resist. "This must be what it felt like when I used to do this to others," she realized. Just as the words began to rise in her throat, Willow made a split-second decision. It was the only way to protect the Stargate Program. The world was not ready to know. Buffy watched as Willow struggled not to answer the question. She struggled so hard that sweat poured down her face in heavy beads. Buffy's lips curved into a small smile as Willow finally opened her mouth. At last, she was going to get answers about whether Willow was a security threat. Instead, Willow's eyes widened, and her body began to tremble. She leaned forward, mouth open, and blood trickled out, dark red drops splattering onto the carpet. "What did you do?" Buffy shouted as she straightened Willow, her hands gripping the front of her shirt. Willow did not answer. She did not know whether she had done something stupid, but in that moment, cutting her own vocal cords had felt like the right choice. Her throat burned. She could still taste blood as she leaned forward again and opened her mouth, more of it spilling onto the carpet. Buffy released her and stepped back. Willow lifted her gaze to the Slayer. "What just happened?" Giles asked. Before anyone could answer, footsteps rushed past the walls of the main office. Buffy smirked and glanced at Tara, who gave a subtle nod. The cloak had worked. For all practical purposes, the wooden door leading into the office no longer existed. To anyone outside, it appeared to be nothing more than a solid stretch of wall, perfectly matching the hallway's design. Those inside, however, could still see the door clearly. A heartbeat later, the footsteps stopped just beyond the wall. Muffled voices followed, and then a man's voice called out sharply, "Red! Red!" More voices joined in. Willow closed her eyes and exhaled through her nose. Breathing through her mouth hurt too much. It was O'Neill. Another voice intoned, "O'Neill, Willow Rosenberg's signal indicates her location is beyond this wall." "Signal?" Xander murmured, his gaze dropping to Willow. She turned her head toward him and gave him a small shrug. Then a female voice called out, "Sir, the blueprints show a door." "Wait, there should be a door here." "Are these the updated blueprints?" Another voice, one Willow recognized as Daniel's, cut in. Willow heard Xander tell Tara to prepare a portal that will take them out of the building and to another location. Buffy, meanwhile, continued glaring at Willow, still trying to understand why she was not speaking. She should be speaking. The truth spell was powerful, so why wasn't she saying anything? Why wasn't she telling them everything? Tara was about to begin the portal spell when Buffy ordered her to make Willow forget everything that had happened. Willow and Buffy locked eyes for several seconds before both looked away. At the same time, Willow heard Daniel and Carter calling out for her while Teal'c stated that he could not locate another entryway. The Scoobies exchanged uneasy glances when another voice, O'Neill's, announced that they would have to create their own entrance. Willow guessed that Tara's confusion spell was still active, since she was finding it difficult to use her telepathy or extend her telekinesis outward. She could not move her hands or her feet. They were bound together by something invisible. Magic, Willow realized. She needed a way to break Tara's concentration, and the opportunity soon arrived. "Tara!" Buffy shouted after Xander warned that the people who came for Willow might use explosives to breach the wall. "I need the forgetting spell, like right now. Make Willow forget that we were ever here, and that we... just make her forget." Tara nodded and stepped toward Willow, who remained seated on the couch as Tara whispered the incantation. Tara's hands began to glow as she stood over her, Willow staring up at her face. Suddenly, Willow surged to her feet. She rose just far enough for the top of her head to slam into the underside of Tara's chin. Willow groaned in pain. Tara clutched her jaw with a sharp cry, stumbling to the side. Everyone in the room rushed forward, some toward Willow to restrain her, others toward Tara to steady her. But this was exactly what Willow wanted. Tara lost her concentration. Willow felt the confusion spell lift, though her telepathy and telekinesis still felt muted. She dug deep, like drawing on the last breath before struggling underwater, and reached out with her mind. Two vases in the room responded. She hurled one into Giles' back and sent the other crashing into the wooden door. "What was that?" O'Neill's voice called from just outside the room. He and the others were still unable to see the door from the other side. Willow felt the magical bindings vanish. She could move again. She lunged for the door. Buffy leapt at her. Xander clutched his head, stumbling back in disbelief at how chaotic everything was becoming, and shouted for them to stop. Dawn hurried to Giles' side while Tara groaned in pain. Buffy caught hold of Willow just before she could grasp the doorknob. With a cry of rage, Buffy hurled her onto the couch. Willow landed hard, rolled off, then sprang back to her feet and charged. She slammed into Buffy, tackling her around the waist and driving her to the floor. "Buffy! Willow!" Xander shouted as Willow rolled off Buffy before the Slayer could grapple with her again. Xander rushed forward, wrapped his arms around Willow from behind and pulled her back. Buffy scrambled to her feet just as Willow snapped her head backward. The back of her skull cracked into Xander's nose. He released her with a cry, clutching his face, just as Buffy surged forward again. Willow sidestepped. Buffy barely missed her. Willow sprinted for the door, weaving past Dawn and Giles, seized the doorknob and twisted it open. She pulled. A flash of yellow light burst across the threshold. "What was that?" Daniel's voice carried clearly now that the door was open. "O'Neill," Willow heard Teal'c warn. "The door is open." Before she could step through, Buffy tackled her with a snarl. The momentum sent them crashing onto the floor outside the office. Buffy screaming, "I hate you!" as they hit. Before any more blows could land, Teal'c and Daniel grabbed Buffy and hauled her off Willow. Willow lay there, eyes wide with fury, staring up at the Slayer. Her gaze flicked to Carter and O'Neill, and a strange sense of relief washed over her. They helped her to her feet while Teal'c pinned Buffy against the wall beside the once imperceptible door, ordering her to calm down. Daniel and the others moved into the office, where the remaining Scoobies stared in stunned silence, looking lost and shaken. O'Neill ordered them to raise their hands. They obeyed, sinking to their knees as Daniel entered the room. His gaze swept over them, narrowing in recognition. He had seen their photographs in Willow's apartment during team nights. "Wait a second," Daniel murmured, studying their faces. He turned and stepped back through the open doorway, taking a closer look at the girl Teal'c was escorting inside. Buffy was guided to the couch and made to sit. Daniel glanced between her and the others before asking evenly, "You're all Willow's friends, right?" No one answered. Carter entered the office after receiving a message from Agent Barrett. Her eyes fell on the blonde Slayer, and recognition struck her hard. The girl had been introduced to her in Colorado Springs as Anne. "Anne?" Carter blurted, stunned. "Why are you a part of this?" She looked around the room, then turned to Daniel, who stated quietly that these were all Willow's friends. "Why?" Carter asked, half in anger and half in shock. She shook her head when no one answered. Turning to O'Neill, she explained that the Army and some of the NID Rapid Response personnel had broken through a biometric lock in the sub-basement. "The room is large. There's a lot of computers, servers, and hard drives. I think we found where the hack came from." "Oh, for crying out loud," O'Neill exclaimed, looking around the office before addressing the group. "Have Barrett take the computers and doohickeys to DC. They'll be needed as evidence." and have him send some people to bring these guys in. We're going to have a little chat with them in... He and SG-1 turned toward Willow, who grunted as she stood at the entryway, staring at the Scoobies. She then looked at O'Neill and the others before stepping inside, walking past Xander and an angry Dawn, and moving toward the desk in the corner. She picked up a piece of paper and a pen. "Willow?" Carter called, moving toward her. She watched Willow write on the paper, her eyes widening. Willow then looked up, fixing the Scoobies with a death glare, before returning the completed note to Carter. "Carter?" O'Neill asked. Carter pressed her lips together. Willow wrote that she glanced at the girl she knew as Anne and continued. "Someone used a spell to compel her to speak the truth. Anne wanted to know Willow's role in what we do for a living." "A truth spell?" Daniel asked. O'Neill blinked. Teal'c tilted his head. Carter nodded. "The spell worked." Willow was about to... She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and continued. "Something prevented her from using her telepathy and telekinesis outwardly. She used her telekinesis inwardly. She cut her own vocal cords." SG-1 was stunned. "You mean..." O'Neill's voice shook as he read the note. "She cut her own vocal cords to stop herself from speaking," Teal'c finished calmly. Carter handed the note to O'Neill. "Some of them need medical attention, and there are a few unconscious bodies 2 floors above us. And she still can't properly use her abilities." She said, "Buffy," Xander muttered softly, his hands still behind his head. Carter and the others looked over at Buffy, aka Anne, in surprise. Carter asked, "You're Buffy? Wait, I thought Buffy died." Willow quickly wrote another note and handed it to Carter, who read it aloud before passing it to O'Neill. "Long story," Carter repeated, relaying what Willow had written. Just then, a group of NID personnel arrived. O'Neill ordered them to escort the Scoobies and any other captured individuals to the local hospital for evaluation. They would then be transported to DC for debriefing, where the next steps regarding the Scoobies would be determined. More updates arrived over the radios. The rest of the main building was empty. A team of NID and Army personnel had checked the dorms, only to find the rooms deserted. O'Neill acknowledged the report and instructed them to continue securing the building. He then turned to the Scoobies, who were being pulled to their feet. "Anyone know how to turn off whatever being done to Red?" No one spoke for a moment. Finally, Xander exhaled and said he would need to make a call. O'Neill nodded after receiving a positive signal from Willow. Xander was escorted to a nearby phone on the desk. His eyes met Willow's for a brief moment before he dialed a number. After 2 rings, everyone listened as Xander spoke to a female voice on the other line, informing her that it was over and that attempts to block Willow from using magic must cease. After a few heartbeats, Willow nodded at Carter and sent a mental message. "Looks like I have my telepathy back." "Good, you had us worried." "Us too, let's not do this again." "Indeed, Willow Rosenberg." As the Scoobies were escorted away by the NID personnel, Dawn snarled at Willow. "I hate you, Willow. I hate you so much. You ruined all of our lives again." "No, Dawn, you ruined your own lives. I had nothing to do with this. Your anger, Buffy's paranoia, contributed to all of this. You have no one to blame but yourselves. All I did was defend myself against people I thought were my friends. How do you think that makes me feel?" SG-1 and the other Scoobies heard Willow's words as they were escorted out, followed by Willow and the others. "This is going to be bad for them, isn't it?" Willow looked at O'Neill, then Carter, then Daniel, and back to O'Neill. He nodded. Part of her had expected this. Yet, she did not like the answer. Despite everything, these were still her friends. In the presence of the Scoobies, SG-1 decided it was best to communicate mentally with Willow. "We'll get you checked out at the hospital, Red. I'll contact Area 51 and have them send over the Goa'uld healing device. That should repair your vocal cords." Willow gave a small smile and nodded. Moments later, a message came over the radios. A young woman identifying herself as Faith had surrendered peacefully while carrying an unconscious young man over her shoulder. O'Neill reminded everyone that all captured individuals be taken to the hospital for medical evaluation. He then turned to Willow. "Like I said, everyone directly responsible for what happened to you including the hacking of your file and Carter's, will be debriefed in DC. All Willow could do was nod. The harrowing day was over. Now, the consequences would follow. To be continued.